You can see something called Step 1 training guides, I hope, on the screen. Is that okay? Yeah, right, okay. Now, what I'm going to do in this 20 minutes or so is take you through how we want this training in Step 1. The first part of the session was about the overall project. The second part of the session is specifically the Step 1 training and how we've put it together to try and help you, because there was, when we started thinking about the project, we realized that there's no way we could get everybody together on Zoom, have everybody uploading different websites, trying to get in and out of them and do things. It would have been a digital catastrophe, never mind a digital project. So we thought the best way to do this was actually, and to help you in the longer term as well, is to produce effectively a digital resource pack for each step of the training. And today I'm going to go through that digital resource pack for Step 1. Now in that it will contain 3 training guides, which will be sent out to you as PDF documents. Each of them has a technical summary at the front, which shows you how to get to the website, and it's got a link which will take you straight to the website and so on, and some technical tips for different types of computers. For instance, if you're using Apple as opposed to cheaper computers. And hopefully these guides will be sent out to you next week. Is that right, Joe? Hopefully.
We'll get it all sorted. I've got a plan to have everything with everybody by the end of Friday.
Excellent, thank you. In a way, these guides are an aid memoir, because all the websites that we're going to point you at have got their own help facilities in them, but these guides give you the basics of how to get to the points we think you need to be exploring in this foundation step. Of course, a lot of you will want to do a lot more yourself, and should do. You need to explore it in your own time, at your own pace, so that you get familiar with these sites before the project is actually launched. We'll also be sending you out I suppose you could call it a do-it-yourself challenge, which I'll talk about a bit more later, which will also ease you into how you might structure a project and questions that you might ask for your groups. Again, I'll speak more about that later. Now, as I said before, for some people this might not be new, but for others it might be the first time they've ever entered into this world of online historical mapping and Google photography and so on. But let's see how you get along with this particular process. I mean, treat the project as being it's a process of self-exploration for you as well as the youngsters, because a lot of what we're hoping you get from this project you will take on to other projects. It's not just we start the project and then we finish it and that's the project done. We're hoping that a lot of what you learn through this will help shape other projects, not necessarily investigating places. It might be to do with excavations or other activities, but the skills that you can develop and knowing how to use some of these resources will stand you in good stead for lots of different types of projects. Landscape archaeologists use these resources all the time. We use them as second nature now. I mean, it's almost by default I go to Google Earth when anybody sends me an inquiry or a query, but you will find out your own level which sites suit you and which ones you want to use. We want you to we want to leave you free to shape your own projects and how you think about them. All we're trying to do is just throw some seed corn into the process for you, and take time to practice with these guides when you actually get them. Now, so I've broken them down into 3 distinct stages, as it were, 3 distinct guides. One is what the places look like from the air, and that will concentrate on the Google Earth aspect. The second is getting to know maps, and that in particular, those are modern maps. And the third part is looking into the past with maps. And what I'll do now is go over those in a little bit more detail for you. So the first stage is what the places look like from the air. Now, in a way, if you look at that image carefully of Heathrow, you could probably, even though it's got a timestamp on it, you could probably have a good idea when that was taken if you looked at this in the future, because every bay in the airport has got an aircraft in it. It's in lockdown, effectively, Heathrow in lockdown, where all the aircraft are still docked to the bays. They ran out of storage space for these things. So that, it's a statement in time, just one image like that. But Google Earth, what we want you to do is to explore Google Earth. And in particular, we would recommend that you use Google Earth Pro for those who are familiar with Google Earth. In reality, there are kind of two versions of it. One is more a mix between aerial photography, accessibility, and social media. It allows you to do lots of things, lots of sharing with communities around the world and sharing what you see and things like that. And there's a version called Google Earth Pro, which has got pretty much most of the similar facilities, but has one added benefit. And that is it's got access to historical photography. And you just download the Google Earth Pro from the website. All the details are in the guides that will be sent out to you. And Google Earth Pro is far more flexible for this type of project because of the historical photography in particular. Using Google Earth, it's like having your own drone. And in a way, we know kids today like the idea of flying drones. It's fraught with certain nightmares, as we know, and it's also sort of an expensive hobby. But it does give you the ability to fly around. And what it does most importantly is gives kids the view from above. It allows them to explore places they couldn't otherwise get to. You can fly over places. You can look at what things look like on the ground, get used to pattern recognition. It's an incredibly powerful tool, is aerial photography. And as Mark's demonstrated, you can also view many places in 3D as well. As you go along, many cities have got 3D models built into them. Now, many areas on Google Earth Pro, the imagery is taken at different dates. So even over the period of the last 15 to 20 years, you can see places changing rapidly in the modern environment. And it's a great way for kids to look at how quickly places can change, or conversely, how they don't change. So in a way, what we want you to do is use Google Earth as a kind of prime aerial survey investigation tool. You could also, for instance, use Bing Maps for those who've ever used it. That's a site with maps and aerial photography on it. This gives you alternate aerial imagery, and often it's taken at different times and by different companies. So you can mix and mingle the two types of imagery. There's also the important value with Bing Maps that it includes access to Ordnance Survey 1 to 25,000 scale mapping, which isn't accessible on some of the other sites. But the National Library of Scotland also provide access to aerial imagery. So you can see there's lots of sources where you can get aerial imagery to work with. In essence, keep it to three: National Library of Scotland, Bing, and primarily Google Earth, again, so you don't sort of drift off into unknown territory. And it'll start that process of looking at the land from above. Now, we're wanting kids to learn to explore the ground from above without buying a drone. What can they see when they look at that aerial photography? It's a bit like having your own stealthy police drone, which Sherlock Holmes didn't have, of course. But can you find a place? What does it show you? What's peculiar? Is there something on there you don't understand what it is? What is that peculiar shape you see on that aerial photography? These are all very simple questions that you can take groups through. You can look at places that are changing in short space of time. Again, if you know the answer to which Roman fort this might be, put it in the chat. But even over a short period of time, you can see the excavations taking place there, because the Google Earth Pro gives you a slider and you can look at different time dates. It shows you which time dates places have been photographed, and often that's now almost annually in some cases. Are there some things you can't identify on there, like what's causing the shadows down in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen? You can use Street View. That shows a reconstruction of a wooden Roman fort gateway and wall. There are many different ways you can explore Google Earth. It's not just from the air, it's from the ground as well, but primarily it's to allow this feeling of manipulating a drone and investigating what places look like. Now, the second part of the pack is about getting to know maps, and this primarily is about Ordnance Survey maps, and we're using something called the Charles Close Society, who kindly given us permission to use their portal, because it is a map portal. It's a society that basically studies the history of the Ordnance Survey and Ordnance Survey maps. Those are a photograph that you can see there of some of my map collection. You can see they're all battered and worn, and in one case, the one on the right has got GR on the top of it. It gives you some idea how old some of my maps are. But the Charles Close Society is the online portal into any number of mapping data sets, and in particular the Ordnance Survey modern maps like the Land Ranger, the 50,000 scale mapping for England, Scotland and Wales, mapping for Northern Ireland, the Isle of and Wales. And you can see in the top right hand corner of the screen, the basic resources are just a click away. Access to all the different scales and availability of Ordnance Survey maps is just sort of one click away from this one portal. Can't take you through every aspect of it because there are so many. This is an opportunity for you to explore maps and for your groups to explore maps and start to then see if you can find some of the things you found on the aerial photography, on the modern mapping and so on. Compare Google Earth with what you see on the maps. What things are on maps aren't on the aerial photography, for instance. Things like contours tell you about the lie of the land on maps, but in Google Earth you can look at some places in 3D. You can start to think about places in different ways. Are there any unusual place names you can find on maps, for instance, that you might not find on Google Earth? Things like Gasworks Lane or something like that, when there's no longer a gasworks there. There are all sorts of ways you can explore maps, and the Charles Close Society gives you the opportunity to explore all sorts of maps, including maps for Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Isle of Man, Guernsey, and so on. They can all be accessed through different aspects of this website. It's a wonderful resource, and we're very grateful that they've allowed us to use this for our project. So I would advise you use this particular one. And thirdly, I could spend the next 3 hours, and I'm not going to, and you wouldn't want me to, but I could spend the next 3 hours just talking about this site, the National Library of Scotland, which I think is the most wonderful map site. That use of the word wonderful again, most wonderful website I've ever come across. If you've got any interest in the past and of maps in particular, because it's not only just maps of Scotland this site provides, it's maps of almost everywhere. It's an incredible site, and it would take me all afternoon to explain all its facilities, but it is incredibly comprehensive, and we'll use this more and more as the project goes on. It's just a simple click on the web and you're into the website. It's a wide range of maps, many are specific to Scotland, but you've got maps, for instance, of the First World War trench maps in Europe during World War I accessible. You've got all sorts of historical maps, you've got estate maps, tithe maps, whole range of historical maps, but primarily the thing we're interested in using are the Ordnance Survey maps of those time benchmarks I talked about, the first edition of 150 years ago and the second edition maps of 150 years ago. They are very easy to access on that particular National Library of Scotland website. It's got lots of help videos and things to help you, take you through, as well as the digital guide that we're sending you. You can work along with their help videos and explore different aspects of it yourself. It's a nice way to spend the evening with a glass of red wine. If you're a red wine drinker, other drinks are available. I know which I like, but you can start to explore places in different ways on the National Library of Scotland website. As you can see from the image there, you can look at individual Ordnance Survey first and second edition maps, as well as many other historical maps, but in particular our time benchmark ones. You can see them marked off as individual sheets against a modern map, what area each sheet covers. And on the right-hand side, a little thumbnail image of that map is put up there for you. Click it and it'll take you into the most detailed images. They're really high quality images of those particular maps. You can look at those maps side by side with modern aerial photography. So you can compare two places exactly one against the other, what it looks like now, what it used to look like, say, 100 years ago or 150 years ago. And there is a slider bar which allows you to move one against the other. It's really very, very easy to use. You can overlay the old map against the modern aerial photography and see how it relates exactly to the modern ground. So again, if you're wanting to investigate a place that was there in the past in relationship to a place that's there now, you can see exactly where, for instance, that case, the old hall on the old map was in relation to the old hall that's there now, that's now a pub. It's so easy to use. It couldn't be easier, in fact. And you can also, there is a facility on there to look at LiDAR as well. As well as the aerial photography, they do have the LiDAR a LiDAR data set available that you can compare with the historical maps side by side or overlaying one on top of the other. The permutations are kind of almost endless, and it would take me an awful long time to explain all the different permutations, all the different map sets that are available. You can overlay different map sets of different dates with aerial photography of different dates, and so on and so forth. Take time to explore it, take time to get to know it. And that's partly one of the reasons why we've held this sort of introductory session with the step one training, so that by the time we get to the launch in July, you as group leaders will have had time to explore some ideas, explore some of the websites, had a play about. Hopefully, you've all been prepared to choose a place of your own, as it were, and experiment with a place that you've chosen and see what sort of case file you can build up for your place. If you start doing it as if this is your own place that you're exploring, and use the guides we're sending out and the help videos and the help sites on the online resources, you will filter out some of the things that may not be appropriate, some of the things which are appropriate, and which websites take you where you want to go. So by exploring these places, you'll be learning as you go along. You'll learn a lot more by doing it and playing about with it than I could ever tell you. So as the steps move on, and we move up to step 2 and to step 3, where we delve deeper into the historical data sets, you'll see how all the pieces will fit together. And we'll also start looking at using LiDAR and more techie stuff as time goes on. But initially, explore, dip your toe into the water in this foundation step with those digital guides, and in between the steps, we will help you as much as we can to explore that and be on that journey with you, as it were. Questions can be sent into the YAC website, and Joe is going to coordinate those and pass them on to us. And we will try and answer any questions that you have or any problems that you're having, whether they be technical or whether they be philosophical or conceptual about places and how to think about places, or any help with manipulating the software and so on. This is a process that stretches out. It's not just one training session, move on quickly. It's a progressive project over the next few months. And of course, we're going to send you a bit of homework. This is the challenge that we'll be sending out to you with the digital pack, and it's called A Tale of Two Castles. Now, in a way, this is really just to get you going again. I formulated some questions in relation to A Tale of Two Castles in a way that you might structure something for your group. It's just a way of helping you think about how you might explore a modern place in relation to an old place, and not just thinking about the history of a castle, or the history of two castles, or how they relate to each other, which is a kind of traditional archaeological approach, but what's happening in some of those streets just around that castle or that mound. What are those brick walls with the doors and windows in that I showed you earlier on? What stories do they tell you? Have a look at the historical maps from 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and look at the Google photography that's available now that Mark's showing, the 3D Google imagery you've got of York. You can use place marks, you can put information on the various websites. It's a way of exploring for you. And in a way, what we're wanting to do is help you to learn, hopefully, and then hopefully help you to pass that information on to your members. And hopefully you saw all that and the technology worked. And I think at this point, I'm going to hand back to either Joe or Penny. I can't remember now.